Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. I am your host, Faith Sage, and I am here with an amazing guest, Kristen Ayers. I think I'm saying it correct. We have a past connection with being on a beauty pageant. Like, if you didn't know, of course, I was a queen. And we're going to talk a lot about some grief, losing a parent, losing an identity, some PTSD. Like, we're going to throw all the crap at it because why not, right? Welcome, Kristen. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And yeah.
Faith, I have no doubt that today we will talk about a lot of things that have probably nothing to even do with what we just said. And I have faith that your listeners will just follow right along.
Absolutely. Well, I'm hoping. Here's hoping always.
This is the first, probably one of the first times that I will be talking about my mom, losing my mom. And so I tend to get that nervous energy where I make jokes, but that's just me, and I don't mean to be offensive, but that might not happen at all, and we might just cry for 30 minutes straight. So let's get to it.
Let's get to it. You know, interestingly enough, my fallback when it comes to hard things is laughter and jokes and making others and making myself like laugh as opposed to like feeling sad and down.
Yeah.
And so it is like, and I often have to temper my social media because I like to make jokes about things, but other people take everything very, very seriously. And so I have to find that happy medium in the middle because it's like, you know.
Yeah, so that's funny that we're talking about that, because when at my mother's funeral, the showing, I come from a small town. I was so thankful and happy that a lot of people came out to just show the respect. She was sick for a really long time. She had a chronic brain injury, encephalopathy, which is just like the shrinking of your brain. So things just shut down and they don't turn back on. So it's worse than Alzheimer's, because like a lot of that is memory, and when it gets to the worst, they just they forget who they are, can't get out of bed. But my mom's communication, she was no longer able to communicate for like the last 8 years. And and because there is no long-term, which is a totally other political topic that we don't need to talk about today, but there's really no genuine skilled nursing for long-term care for elderly based on their conditions.
Right.
So that's very, very upsetting. And so no one really knew how to handle her. So she was always being bounced around from long-term care because she needed care 24/7. It was just too much for my family.
Right.
And so at her funeral, when everyone came out, it had been a really long time since a lot of them had seen my family or seen her. And I know that whenever she was at gatherings, she was so excited to always be around everybody. She took pictures. I think she didn't care where she was. It didn't matter if she was at somebody else's funeral. She'd be like, okay, before everyone leaves, can we all just take one group picture?
I love her already.
Yeah. And so I wanted it to be this light, because it had been so dark for so long for me and my family, that I wanted it to be this light remembrance. We were joking. I mean, it was louder than what's the line at a wedding? When everyone lines up to meet the bride and groom and congratulate them right after the wedding. You know what I'm talking? It's not an assembly line, but
right. I keep thinking of like a reception line.
Receiving line. Yeah, receiving
receiving line.
Yeah. And it was like that. And it was loud. And everyone was so excited to be there and to see
Yeah.
us again and to see her and to remember and talk about amazing moments that they had with her.
Yeah.
That and there were jokes and there was laughter and a lot of it. And so I think that was the way she would want everyone to have that moment with her. And I probably should have taken one huge group photo before it was done, but I did not. I did not.
Yeah. I'm a big photography person. Like, I'm a big photograph person. Like,
Yeah,
my kids hate it. They hate it because I'm like, oh, we're all together, photograph.
yeah,
Because I never know. And you never know when it's going to be the last time, when someone's going to be missing from that photograph. And
yeah,
then you can go back and you can look at those and say, hey, this was, this time and this time and this time. And
yeah,
it's just a progression of, like I have one with my 5 kids. We had went camping. I have it. It's posted all over my social media. And now when we all get together, like I have those family photos of the
yeah,
5.
yeah,
And then now when we get together, we have of the 4, and I take them all the time. And the same with the grandkids, because when we lost our granddaughter, that's the last photo that I have of her in it. And so I'm a big proponent. I'm like, take every photo you can. I don't care how you look. I don't care who's in it. I don't care if someone you hate is right next to you. Take it anyway. Doesn't matter.
yeah. And the thing is what's really interesting is I didn't know you before
Right.
the loss. Um, so I don't know how you might have changed, how it might have changed you, how it might have, you know, livened you, right? Made you feel alive. I know that with long-term illness with my mom, there is loss
Yeah.
because I was already really mourning every single thing that happened, knowing that there's a good chance that it might come back. There's a good chance. And then it does. And you're like, oh, okay. All right. She's like back to 80% of her baseline. So maybe she'll get that extra 15%, or at least she's at 80. And then it
Hmm.
would slip to 40, and then just to have it not come back is like one of those things where it wasn't so sudden that you had to deal with all of those emotions up front immediately, because I was sitting in it. I was sitting in it as she was getting sick. Now, the so interesting thing about that, because I'm a very weird person, is that I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned, because now there is loss in so many different ways. There's loss of people older than you and younger than you. There's loss of relationships and friendships
Yeah.
that never will be again. There's loss of identities of you had a professional career, you were a mom, you're no longer a mom. Like those, all of these types of relationships and moments that you had and now you no longer have. There's a lot of grieving for all of those different things and mourning, the moments you no longer will be able to create, right?
Right.
And what I noticed, and it coincided with when I started to have kids as well. She passed away between, I have like Irish twins, and she passed away in between those two children being born. Is that, again, with the photos, with sharing the moments, but also I really tend to try to be present as much as possible, and not in the sense that is healthy and positive. Like, I'm so, you know, um, aware that these relationships may change, and they may
Yeah.
change tomorrow, and they may change a year from now. And I'm a long-term projector. So I'm constantly like, okay, if I do this, or if they have done this, what are my emotions in the moment? But how do I feel about it? How will I feel about it? Where is this relationship headed? Am I showing them that I no longer have boundaries? Am I showing them, do I need to show them boundaries? Is this a relationship that I even want to go forward? So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
interesting because with the grieving, normally the advice is just embrace everyone and embrace everything you possibly can and hold on to it because you just don't know. And to me, that's great advice. But the flip side of that, the advocate in me, right, the legal part of me is like, but there's also a moment where that vulnerability can turn on you if you're not
I'm
careful.
not, yeah, I'm not a big proponent of like hold on to everything and everyone at every moment
Yeah.
you're in grief. I believe that when you're in grief, and I need to choose my words very carefully here. I believe when you're in grief, you need to have stricter boundaries
Mm,
than when you're not in grief.
mm,
For the simple fact that it's easy to be taken advantage of when your guard is down.
yeah.
And when you're already hurting
Hmm.
and you just embrace everyone coming into your world, then you have more of a susceptibility to be taken advantage of or to be led, down a wrong path or whatever, or
Yeah.
empty promises, all of these things.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a proponent of like you keep your boundaries, like if you don't want to go do something, or you don't want to go hang out with someone, or you just don't want to do this,
Or something
don't
doesn't
do
feel
it.
right anymore. It doesn't feel right anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Like
but you
this
keep
is where
doing
you
it.
need to like
Yeah.
have your own self-discernment and be like, you know what? This isn't good for me at this time. Like
Yeah.
it might be, you might go back to like whatever it is, in 6 months, a year, whatever. But at this moment, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. And I'm gonna remove myself from this situation or
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep. And I think that's a really good segue into, okay, so I think people are grieving all the time. I
All the
think
time.
I think we're
Yes.
grieving and we're mourning the loss of a life we never created for ourselves. We are
Yes.
mourning failures that we think were our fault. Like
Yep.
like we knew. In what I mean by that is, instead of it just being an opportunity to learn, we knew for a fact that if we did X, Y was probably going to happen, but we did it.
Yes.
And there's a lot of mourning the loss of life that we have been given, the life
Yes.
given so far that we might have not been the best at navigating,
Right.
or the way we've handled situations up to that point. And so I think with the loss of my mom sparked a whole bunch of avenues, creative, positive attitudes. Yeah, probably an attitude too about life, but a whole bunch of different endeavors that I decided to go into. And so, professionally and personally, I was very harsh growing up. And so I think I was a little softer. I was trying to see, okay, I was trying to understand people as opposed to just being like, these are my boundaries, you cross them, peace.
Hmm.
And then I think that I'm like this, that. Like I went the opposite, and now I'm trying to get back to a baseline
Right.
of, okay, yeah, that is not how you can treat me. And I really don't care what's going on in your life right now.
Right.
Because again, I now realize, being an entrepreneur, having kids, there are so many, and just being older, I think there are so many different types of loss. And you
Sure.
don't know what someone's going through, but that also doesn't mean that if I'm the one going through loss all the time, like with a failed business, whatever, I just can't take that out on everybody else and let it spill over into everything else. And so I think I think that's one thing that it taught me, that to be softer with people, to try to figure out where they're coming from, which I'm trying to navigate. But then because of that, it really gave me that whole Japanese like ikigai theory of like, okay, what am I really supposed to be doing? I'm a mom. Yes, I love that. And what am I
Mhm.
supposed to be doing as a mom? Where can I be used? The best possible way as that, but who else am I and what else should I be doing? And then that's one of the reasons why Prime was created, because I had just started down this path of like self-discovery and becoming a leader, and the title holder just made sense for me personally. And then I was like, but I'm not traditionally a pageant person at all, as aren't you. But this was
Nope.
a great opportunity for me to get out of that comfort zone, get with totally different people, see what they're all about. It's not a cult. So like, we're just going to come together for a short amount of time and learn some skills and do some things, and then we're going to move on with our lives. And get back to, it's okay for me to take the pretty pictures. It's okay for
Yeah.
me to wipe my tears and take a really nice photo and do really cool things and be happy about the person I am today.
It's
But I
okay to
also
be
felt like
successful. It's also okay to be
it's
successful. I think
also okay to
that's
be
what,
successful through your grief. I started
yeah.
I started 3 businesses since my mom has passed away. You know what I'm
How
saying?
long has it been since your mom passed?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you 2017. It's 2017.
Okay. So not that long. 6 years.
But we had dedicated so much of our lives. See, I left home at 18. We never lived in the same state. But she lived in a neighboring state. And when she got sick in my late 20s, we were bouncing her from Ohio to West Virginia, based on like what care she could receive, because they
Mhm.
are animals. There's no regulation. There is, but there isn't. It's still
Right.
private enterprise. So private enterprise gets away with just how they would like to make money that month. And if it's not my mom,
Right.
then she's gone. And so that was really sad and frustrating. I don't want to get off topic. I don't remember what I was. That will happen 3 more times during this conversation.
Probably at least 10. Let's be
Yes,
real.
yeah. But I think that there was just, we were spending every weekend already
Yeah.
traveling to wherever she was, whether that be 3 hours away, an hour away, wherever she was. And so that part of me, I didn't have that anymore. And so I filled it with giving love to my family, and I filled it with trying to spread love from a business perspective. So instead of just creating a business to make money, I created a social capitalized business where it was, I'm not going to do it unless it's good for the community. I'm not going to do it unless it's good for my customer.
And
And
this
so
is Prime.
that's prime. That's
That was
prime,
the
because
premise.
if we would have done pageantry just as it was, and it was another competition where you take money, somebody gets a crown and a prize package and feels good about themselves, then I would have never done it. And this is not. This is a social group where people can come together and go, well, I come from this background, I'm this age, I'm at this state, I'm doing this. Everyone goes, good. Keep doing you keep doing, everybody keep doing what they're doing. Let's just have a facilitated environment where they can come in and recognize their strength and become a leader. But we're not born leaders, so everyone needs to just work on themselves and work on what can make them happy. And I think I mentioned this self-care, which is what Prime is all about. Any type of self-care. If you need to go back to school, if you need to get your mentally
Yeah.
get right, if you're struggling with anger or grief or something, and you really should be focusing on that. There's so many other women, which is why podcasts are so popular, that need to hear the same thing. They
Yeah.
may not necessarily need to hear a what, how, when, where, what program can I buy from you. It's just, they just need to hear that other women are going through it too, and just sit in it. It's okay to
Yeah.
sit right now. It's okay to feel the way you feel. It's okay to be trying to figure out how to fix it, but you just haven't figured it out yet. All of that is okay. And that's why it's, I am inspired by women who, like you, who have chosen to say, okay, Kristen, I don't know what I'm doing, but I trust that at the end of this process, I will feel better, know more about myself, and be on a different path, a better positive path for myself than I was before.
Yeah.
No perfection, just better than I was before.
So interestingly enough, so if you guys haven't guessed by now, I was a queen in the Prime pageants. Okay. I was Mrs. Minnesota. Ooh, I got it right.
Yes, you did. You were
Because I
wonderful.
I failed with my title so many times before I finally got it right. Um, and doing some research. So it was a couple years ago when I was a queen at in the Prime pageants. And this year I was doing some research and I found out that because I had lost my stepdaughter in 2016, then I lost my granddaughter in 2021. And so I didn't realize that in 2021, when I lost my granddaughter, it kicked me instantly into PTSD. And I didn't realize that until now, until like a couple months ago. And so I was doing the steps without knowing what steps to do to come out of that PTSD. And one of those steps was signing up for Prime, because when you go into PTSD, you start closing in on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't leave your house. You don't do anything out of the ordinary. You don't let that phone out of your sight, especially if it's grief related and you've lost someone. Like, you don't let that phone out of your sight, because what if somebody calls and something happens? You want to know about it immediately. Like, you don't go to the store because like you feel like out of place. You feel that something's going to happen. There's a shoe that's going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this impending doom all the time. That was
Mm-hmm.
what I felt when I was in PTSD. And I realized, when my kids started saying, "Well, Mom, when's the last time you left the house?" 3 weeks. I don't need to leave the house. Why do I need to leave the house? I have you guys. You guys can go run for everything I need. Like, and so for me, it was just recognizing, one, that I was in this moment. I didn't know what this moment was, but I was recognized this wasn't me. I like to go do things. I like to go grocery shopping. I like to go take a drive. And then all of a sudden I see this advertisement for becoming a queen, like doing a pageant. I'm like, I'd always thought of doing a pageant. When I was younger, I was actually asked to be Miss Minnesota, with, I think, some big prominent um,
System.
pageantry system,
Yeah.
but I couldn't do it at that time because I had already had a child. I think I was 17 at the
Oh
time.
yeah, 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 yeah. That
I
that
had already had a
arcane
child, so I
age.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so, you have those moments. I already had sponsors at the time and everything that would have sponsored me to become Miss Minnesota. And so I'm like, okay, let's just relive our years of 17 at, 40 something. And so I signed up to become a queen. And what was nice about it was because I was able to pull myself out of my comfort zone to walk. I had to walk across the stage. I
Mhm.
had to have a gown. I don't dress fancy.
You had
I
to
don't.
you had to get back into talking in public
I
too.
did. I had to start standing in front of people and talking. And
Mhm.
it was hard at first, but it was so worth it, because um it just pulled me out of the stage, the mental state that I was in, that I didn't even realize I was freaking in.
Okay, now let's caveat this by saying that not all pageant systems are like this.
No, they're
We
not.
have to research the ones just in case, but
Okay.
Prime specifically at from the top down, which is me, top down, I was in that place of we
Yeah.
are not going to create a mean girl system. We are not going to create one more disgusting portrayal of women who are just worried about their ass, I mean, their butt fat. Okay. We're not going to do that. We're going to create a good space where normal women dealing with normal issues, deep issues,
And
all
have normal
personality,
bodies coming on
normal
that
bodies,
stage.
normal expectations. Like,
Like, I rocked that stage with the damn mohawk and combat
you did.
boots.
Yeah, you did. You did. You did. And you were wonderful. And I loved it. And not once did I tell you not to wear it.
Mm-mm.
Not once. I want you to leave feeling so genuinely proud of what you have accomplished. And then 5 months from now, if you go, you know what? Love what I did last year, but this year I'm changing. I'm
Right.
doing all the things that I didn't do last year. I'm going to wear heels. I'm going to do this. Great. I don't care. As long as it's authentically you at that
Right.
particular moment while you're going through it. This fear that women, here's where grief is interesting. I think women are allowed to grieve. They're not allowed to do everything in this world and it be accepted, but they are allowed to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is a lot of talk of like how to grieve. So what women are still obviously under a microscope of how it's allowed to happen. And again, like I'm
And
sure
how long? And
and
how
how
long?
long, and I'm sure there were people at the showing with my mother that said, why is she so happy? Like, is there an inheritance we don't know about? And she was just, no, I had embraced
Yeah.
I had embraced what was going to happen. I had embraced what was happening. And I was wanting to just understand what that means for me, my family going forward. And I was okay with people not appreciating the way I was functioning or the way
Right.
or what I wanted. And so I know that I'm a lot stronger and more bold and courageous than a lot of other women.
Yeah.
And I've just chosen to be that person. Now, what that has done for me, though, as I've gotten older, and you know this too, that as you become a bold individual to say, I will be who I want to be, and not in a bad way where I'm going to like
Right.
pound all of you in the ground just to be who I want to be. No,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you be you. When I see you heading into a fire, I might try to tell you, listen, you're about to head into a fire. Now, sometimes I just mention that there's a fire extinguisher just in case. You know, I'm not
Yeah.
going to strap you on my back and keep you from the fire. A lot of the fires I don't put out anymore. You know, I let you do you, which I have learned over time. And I think it
That's
was
called boundaries.
I think it was the fear of my mom
Yeah.
dying, where I couldn't stop that in any way. We talked to we went to the Mayo Clinic, we went to Cleveland Clinic. We were trying with every single expert to figure
Yeah.
out what was wrong with her to do. We did experimental drugs and like nothing worked. And
Yeah.
so I realized at that point I can save other people. And then I realized, no, I can just allow them and share my experiences with
Yeah.
them, and they still need to do what they are going to do. Now,
Yes.
I have to I have to accept what they are doing, okay? I have to accept their genuineness. I have to accept their authenticity. When it starts to affect our relationship and how they feel they can treat me because of what they have accepted in their life, then that is my new thing that I am learning this year, where I can accept you,
Yes.
you know, but I also realize, okay, well, now you have shown me who you are, who you want to be, who you want me to be in your life. And I might not be comfortable with that. And they don't want, like, once they set their boundary, great. But then for people to respect your boundary,
Yeah.
it doesn't always work that way because they don't understand. Well, since you've accepted mine, then that's just the way it is. No, I have a boundary too, and
Yep.
vice versa, right? So I realized that time is fleeting, yes, but we have to be comfortable with who we are and what we're learning and what we're doing along the way. And the only way to do that is to get the new experience, to experience the new experience, and
Right.
and see what we've learned from that. So I think I've mourned more loss. I've only had one. I mean, my grandparents are gone, yes, but between everyone that's super close, immediate family wise, my mother has been the only one that has passed so far. So in my life, because I have gone out on a limb and been bold and challenged myself constantly over and over again, I think I'm a, you know me, I'm a very broad, crazy, not conspiracy theory, but I'm taking all of the variables into consideration, even though it's
Right.
overwhelming constantly. I think my problem is I grieve a lot of what I feel like am choosing to miss out on, or I grieve a lot of like failures that I know had to happen. And what
Yeah.
did I learn from it? But there is a grieving process in that.
There's a grieving process to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I
To
switched,
everything.
switched gears real fast. Sorry, I went
That's
from
okay.
mom
That's
to
okay. We
but
will,
but
we'll
but
roll
I
with it.
I think people underestimate the potential of self-care being such a freeing, prolific experience that you can have when you decide to get the right support system around you, and they allow you to do new things, and they allow you to be your quirky self, and they, you know, again, they might think it's a fire you're running into, but they ask enough questions where they understand why, and so they go, okay, well, shit, do you, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, okay, what do you need? What do you need? How can I
Yeah.
serve you then to make that happen for you? If that's what you feel like you need, how do I help you? And I want to live the rest of my life having a good balance of that.
Yes. I like that. That's amazing because it's when you try to control the other person or say, you know what, that's been bad. Like you shouldn't do that. But it might be good for them. It was bad for you, but it might be great for them, you
They could be
know?
a rock star. I could have,
Correct.
and when you experience it too, Faith, say they're going through the experience at 28 in 20, what year are we in? 2024, maybe
24.
2025, maybe, who knows? Uh, that they might be going through it and have different resources available to them, have a different
Yeah.
psyche than you did. You might have gone through the exact same thing, but 20 years ago with
Hmm.
your psyche, with your experiences. And so, yeah, you got to let them do what they're doing.
I
Yeah.
think it also segues into not even a segue. I don't know what the hell that word was for. But it also transitions into how much that person is willing to break before they can
Ah,
build.
ooh,
Because
hits
you
me.
have to, one, understand that, self-care is tossed around a lot. It's like a buzzword these days. It doesn't actually mean anything anymore, which is sad because everyone's like self-care Sunday, self-care this, self-care, which sucks because people actually do need self-care, but what is self-care? What
Yeah.
is self-care? That is like you dive into that. So self-care means different things to different people. Um, I'm a big proponent of like self-care. I dive deep into who I am,
Yeah.
like how I react to things, how I project to others.
Mhm.
Like I want to keep those to a minimum, or at least if I'm projecting, I want it to be love and acceptance and all those things. And so I try to like push that out into the world ahead of time rather than be like just walking around with my head in a cloud because there was this one time in my life, and I'll never forget it. I was working at a restaurant, a little deli sandwich shop, and
I can see that for
I
you.
came
I
in
can
a
see
little bit
I
late.
can see you working that little apron with with the
Oh,
strap
yeah,
sticking out.
absolutely. Yep. And I walked in and I asked everyone how they were doing, and one of the ladies, thankfully, she was very candid with me. She goes, we're not sure because we're always wondering what mood you're in when you come in. And I'm like, oh, that hit
Oh,
me hard because their life shouldn't revolve around what attitude I have that day.
interesting.
And so
Interesting.
I had to start I'm like, okay, if this is what I'm putting off, I need to like rethink my whole world because I don't want people to be wondering and worried that I'm coming in a fucking crabby ass mood
Yeah.
today and
Yeah.
it's going to affect them and their whole work schedule.
Love that so
So
much.
that was a hard reality for me to face because no one had ever said that to me before. But I'm glad she did because
Yeah.
it helped me turn introspective and start thinking, okay, how am I projecting myself?
Mhm. The self-care, so I see something there because self-care is the discipline of. So
Yeah,
not just a glass of wine, self-care meme. It is the discipline of using it so that you can improve and maintain your highest overall health.
yeah,
That is different
yeah.
and complex, and we don't have any damn guidance for that. I wish if the school system was going to be, let's not think outside the box, well, then I would rather you just teach the areas of self-care from practically how to keep your mind clear and your
Hmm.
space clear, how to more than balance a checkbook, understand why money and what people do for money and what they are willing to give up in their lives for
Yeah.
money. The why behind all of these things. Why do you need that glass of wine? Why do you want that glass of wine? Why is that,
It's the internal work.
yeah. It's the internal, oh yeah. So the deepness comes
It's,
from
but it's,
things
yes,
will, yeah,
go
things
ahead.
will happen to you.
Hmm.
So if you're the person where it's happened to you, you don't know what to do with it, it'll come out in a very sometimes it's a consistent aggravated state, but then sometimes it's that ping ponging back and forth of like, who is this person? But there's a way, see, I want to caveat that by saying, but you can also be a person who's curious, which
Hmm.
you can
Yeah.
also be the person that when you walk in, they say, well, what are you into now?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
What are you into now? And
Yes.
people ask me that all the time. And I was like, I learned about this. I want to teach you about this. I just did
Hmm.
this podcast on grief. She's fantastic. This woman has lived. Like, what are you into now? And it be a positive thing. And I think that's what self-care is all about. Yes, you might have a banging body because you've been working on physical self-care your
Yeah.
entire, but you're an emotional roller coaster and you are always known as the dramatic girlfriend.
Or your finances are in the
There's, or
shit
your finances are
or
in,
something like that.
yeah. And I was just reading this article last night at 2 a.m. as you do. And
Hmm.
it said, if I can remember it, because it was 2 a.m. If you don't understand, read.
Yeah.
If you understand, but you don't know how to execute, write. If you know what to do and how to do it, go do it. So I think that the reading part to me is the first step in any situation where is go learn. And that means go experience, go ask questions, go read a book. When it's dangerous with me because when I watch like fiction movies, which should be just a fiction movie, like should just be a fiction movie. Like, yay, that was an hour and a half of entertainment. Great. I'm like dissecting to an extent of like, yes, we could be doing that and this, how would we handle that and what would we do? And I think just recognizing that our life is supposed to be full of hard moments that are challenging us to become disciplined in figuring out and maintaining our values and morals, which should change as good and bad things happen to us.
Hmm.
When you receive more money than you've ever received in your life, it should change you. How? Because now you have money, your circumstances have changed. So how is it going to change you? Are you going to be even more frugal? Or are you going to give it away? Were you happy with what you had? You don't need
Are you
anything.
going to go blow it on strippers and blow?
Are you going to go blow?
That's
Period.
not a good idea. Don't
Blowing.
do that.
And it's like I want everyone from this takeaway to recognize that grief can be a positive thing. And maybe I'm really healthy in that way. I don't know. Um, but grief can be a really positive way for you to recognize where you are needed, what is needed in the world, how your life can change now, and then to boldly do it, even when you first feel like crying, instead of really embracing it with a smile. Um, I used to think that I used to think that people eating in a restaurant was the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life when they're eating by themselves. And this was 20, 30 years ago when I was a child, and my mom would constantly have to tell me, honey, you don't know their life. They might be on a business trip and just had a $150,000 deal and they're eating a steak to celebrate.
Yeah.
Or they might be a salesman to get that $150,000 deal. They don't want to talk to anybody right now. They in nature might be really at peace just being by themselves, because I'm going to go sit with them. I'm going to take my food. I'm going to go sit with them. I don't, it
And
just,
they may not want you there.
I get this vibe that like I could do that for them. I could sit with them in that grief. And she's like, just let them eat their nachos. It's not that deep.
Sounds like me when I go to a conference. I'm like, oh, there's a person not talking to
There's
anyone.
a person that's not anybody does. Yeah, Simon Sinek is like fantastic. He always talks about how socially awkward he is. And when he goes to social gatherings, he makes it even more awkward because he thinks, well, there's that socially awkward person. I'll go talk to them. Yeah, but you are too. So now you just made it 20 times worse. Um, but I want to be that person where if there was someone sitting at a restaurant and had, I wish there was like some universal sign of like, you can sit with me. It's okay to sit with me. that I would go sit with them. But I want to be one of these people where I always have a sign that says, you can
Yeah.
come sit with me. You can come sit with me. What do you want to talk
Come
about?
talk to me. I'm
What
an
do you
open
need help
book.
with? And Faith, I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on the podcast, but I just also appreciate you because you've always been that person with me. What do you
Yeah.
need to talk about? What do you want to talk about? What did you find out at 2 a.m. last night that you would like to share with me, Kristen, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about?
I mean, like all the things.
All the things. So yeah, I hope this helps listeners recognize how self-care can fit into their journey of PTSD or loneliness or freaking happiness. You know, like even if you're happy, that doesn't mean that the sky is gonna fall. That's how,
No,
like with my mom, where it was like, oh my God, this is as good as it's going to get, and nothing ever good is ever going to happen again. And it won't unless you go create it. It won't unless when you're looking at your environment, you actually take the time to recognize the gift. There are gifts everywhere. There are opportunities everywhere. There is failure everywhere. Having young kids with one, when she gets anxious, she falls. She likes, that's her thing. Yesterday, instead of going down the slide, she decided she was going to fall halfway down and then look up to see if anyone noticed. Of course, I noticed. You just fell down the darn slide, you weirdo. But the reality is like we're all here for each other.
yeah.
And the failure, it could be there, but so could an opportunity to just be and have the most amazing life, not only for yourself, but for every single person you have an opportunity to touch.
I think so. I like that. I'd heard this before because I've heard lots of things. Um,
I am.
is that no matter what you look for, you will find. So if you're looking for
Mm,
goodness and happiness and
mm,
fulfillment, you'll find it. If you're looking for hate and destruction and oh my gosh, the world is ending and everything is shit, then you're going to find it.
you're gonna find
So whatever you're looking for, you will find. It's just up to you to choose what you search for.
it. Mhm.
And there was another one. There was another gentleman on my podcast who talked about we're all just spiritual beings around each other and spirituality, like the positives and the negatives, like you're bumping into everyone
The
all the
swirl.
time.
Yeah.
And it's just, like who are you going to do you want to attract the positive or do you want to attract the negative? And I'm like, oh, I always want to attract the positive. Always.
Well,
And
that's where we're different, Faith.
you want to attract the negative.
I think for the longest time, I was the strong one. I was in the legal field. So already on a daily basis, people are only contacting me with the negative result. They never contact
Yeah.
me when everything, hey, this contract went really well. So why are you calling me? I don't know. I just thought I'd let you know. No, they
Right.
feel like
Yeah.
people are a-holes when people don't do what they're going to say they're going to do. And then they contact me to figure out,
Yeah.
what's supposed to be done about it. I think with Prime too, they have, I want them to tell me about all of the
Yeah.
good stuff too, but they're mostly calling me because they think I can help them out of something or
Yeah.
figure something out or make it better or just not have the burden of having to think of everything all the time and just share it with somebody, you
Yeah.
know? And I think I think that because of that, I attracted a lot of people. I was like, I welcome the dark. I welcome the lost soul. I welcome the person who really has a lot, but we're not going to sit here in it. We're
Nope.
gonna we're gonna immediately fix it. And that is what I needed to learn, where I can't attract it and then expect everyone to want to fix it immediately.
Because
So
people
now
don't.
most people don't, because just because I attracted it doesn't mean they're ready to.
Right.
And so now I'm realizing, be more like Faith. Have faith.
Oh, that's a good one. I
Be more
like
like
that
Faith.
catch
Be more like
line.
Faith. That's all I have to do in my life, and everything will be fine.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but it'll definitely be more interesting. No, just kidding.
Definitely interesting. Definitely interesting. So yeah, so I think that's important too, where we get into these safe zones. Like you have groups for grieving, everyone
Mhm.
grieving, mothers grieving, right? And yes, to just have a space to be comfortable and to just deal with it the way you need to deal with it. And recognize though that I have to get comfortable being a light switch, to switch it on when someone needs it, to switch it off when they're not ready for it. Right?
Right. Yeah, because it's almost like putting a pathway up and putting lights out,
Yeah.
security lights
Mhm.
to guide the path, but you're not necessarily telling them which path to take. It's like you get to choose your own path.
Yeah.
Here's the
Or
lights,
waiting, or waiting until
which
they
is,
get, yeah, they're not on
oh,
the path,
right.
waiting for them to start walking through the path, and then you can walk with them or turn more lights on for them so that
I
the
just want to
path
be
is
the
brighter.
creeper down there in the dark at the end that says, "Come here, my pretty."
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah, grief is just difficult, and but so is life. And I think with this younger generation, um, they have access to every single bad thing that has ever happened to anyone. Where when we were in
Yes.
small towns, we only knew about that one person who had cancer. We didn't know about anybody else. Now we know about every celebrity, everything. And people are a lot of people need, for whatever reason, or have the opportunity to share their journey about it, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
But now we're closing in on their ability to just be light and bright and positive about the future. And so we need to do just as good of a job recognizing that the social media picture of a perfect life was at one point in your moment of your life, when even if you put the caption perfect life, it could have been a perfect moment. But that's not all of life, and life has really sticky, icky moments that
Right.
I am okay with getting people through, and I am okay going through them. Right now I have a lot going on that is awesome, and I have a lot of, I'm not calling them demons. I have a lot of things that I am trying to work out as a human being.
We all do.
I'm going through all of this. No,
Yeah.
no, we all have things that we're dealing with, but
Correct.
I want to I want to move forward with them. I want
Right.
to, figure them out. I want to dissect them. I want to talk about it. I want to, find different obscure, quirky ways to kind of, you know, get through it. And I want younger people, men and women, I want them both to recognize that that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
That's part of life. That's part of being able to be 40 or 50 or 60 or 90 years old, to recognize that, the more you do and experience, not just having a yacht is the
Or just a phone where it's like
or
this,
just the phone
and they
of
don't
like.
see anything.
Yeah, yeah. And so I again, this, for older women, self-care means something. For younger women, it means, I think, so much more, because one, they don't have bad habits that they now have.
I'm gonna call false on this.
And two, wait,
Mm-mm.
wait, wait, both, but wait, my point is, now they don't have any baseline. So if we could get them on the right track of a healthy, proper way and tools and techniques of dealing with grief, of dealing with proper things. So as their mother passes away, as they deal with the loss of their first job or dream job that it's so out of reach for some reason right now.
Hmm.
And they keep doing all these things, but it's not getting them the result that they want, that they have a healthy way of dealing with,
Right.
what do we do now? How do we pivot? Right. And I'm okay. I'm okay the way I am. I'm at
Yeah.
25, my body's already changing. At 35, my body's changing. At 50, my body changed. And I've been okay the whole time. That's different than at 50, I finally feel like I can embrace who I am. I
Right.
would love for women to be able to do that. But I will tell you
Yeah.
that just like you, at your age, there's something so magical about a woman, because it's so, you're so outgoing with that switch when the light bulb goes off and you go, oh, hell yeah. I am such a different person, and this is amazing for me. That an older woman or older individual, it's really amazing to see. It really is.
It is. I wish that it happens more with the younger women, but I think older women, because the older I get, the less I care.
less you care.
And what I mean by that is it's not the less that I care about people in general, it's the less I care about what people think.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And
gonna
caring
do
about
me.
everything. You
Yeah.
pick and choose what you're going to care about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I like, if you don't like me, great. Don't come near me. Don't talk to me. We don't have to. I'm no hard feelings. I'll walk away. No problem. Um, if you like me, great. We'll have a conversation. No problems. I'm pretty good with my boundaries.
Yeah,
I'm
you
getting
are.
better with them as I get older because I'm realizing that one, life is short. And two, if I want to experience all the things that I want to experience, I can't just let everyone be a time vampire and suck the juice right
Yeah,
out of me, and then
100%.
I don't have time for my stuff.
100%. And I will go one step further, and I wish that there was an exit survey, because you know me, I'm like, well, I didn't go through all this crap with our relationship for me to at least not learn something from it. So let me give you an exit survey so that you can tell me how you think I should improve. And then let me take 5 minutes to just dissect that to see, oh, shoot, I didn't even recognize I made them feel that way, or I did
Well,
that.
first of all, you're gonna have to take 5 minutes to come down off of that rage roller coaster because that would be me. I'm like, who? What? I didn't know.
I've been through this.
Bullshit. And then, you're gonna have to go through all of those emotions to get to acceptance and be like, yeah, well, maybe I did.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And what can I do about it now? So I think you're everyone's going to be okay. We're all going to be okay, but you also need to do the work and in a disciplined, consistent manner. And I want this platform that you have created for everyone to be that for them, to be a space that they can come back to and make sure that they are um, sitting in it in a consistent manner
Yeah.
to be able to gain the skill, not just read one random article and then move on and think that they understand grief, right?
Yeah.
And to not be in denial, to get out of that stage as fast as possible.
You
Because
know, I think that I used to do that when the grief first happened. Because when we lost Cassandra in 16, I had a whole grief program that I was going to launch. And instead of me launching it, I started to get self-conscious of it. I'm just the stepmother, just the
oh,
stepmother. I don't have precedence. This is not mine. Like, I didn't birth this child. Who am I to be
sure.
talking about grief? Who am I to be like helping people on grief? Because I'm just the stepmother.
Yeah.
And then when I lost my granddaughter in 2021, that's when I felt like I was in grief 2.0 because I'm like, shit, I just lost a daughter. Now I'm losing a granddaughter. And that one, that one made me trip a couple times for the simple fact is now I'm watching my own child go through
Oh,
this process.
yeah. Yep.
I'm literally sitting at the table there with them planning the funeral of their daughter and watching the emotions just roll across them
Yeah.
so hard. Um, and just being, it was almost like an out of body experience. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I remember this. I remember being there. I remember the pain. I remember everything. And at that moment in time, you would do anything and everything
Mm-hmm.
to make that funeral
Mm-hmm.
the biggest and brightest and best showcase of all because you wanted to prove your love to that person, right? Because you don't, and I mean, I had to like, okay, and be the voice of reason, but like, not that the guy was trying to take advantage of them or anything that was doing the funeral services, but it's your reasoning and your thought process is not the same when you're
No.
in the midst of that grief.
Yep. And
Which
I
also, I'm going to caveat this since you're a lawyer, I have these weird questions all the time that happens. So when you sign the paperwork for a funeral, because you are in obvious distress, is that legal and binding? And this is where my mind goes in these things.
Yeah,
This is
I mean,
crazy. Maybe I should have been a lawyer.
I no, I'm not answering this question in
She's like, nope,
detail.
we're not going there.
Generally, there has to be a meeting of the minds when two people sit
Yeah.
down to decide what the quid pro quo is going to be. So I'm going to do this for you, you're going to do this for me. Do you
Okay.
understand what that means? If I'm doing this for you, do you understand what that means? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this
Okay.
is what I'm giving you in return. Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, and they ask that quite a bit. I just like
Yeah.
it's been drilled into my head since I was little. It's like, are you signing under duress? Like,
Yeah,
are you
under
signing
duress.
under
Oh, yeah,
duress?
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, and like when my daughter-in-law gave birth, she wanted to do it naturally. Well, the baby was ended up being too big. So then in the middle of all this stuff going on, she gets the injection in the back, whatever, to
Epidural, yeah.
yeah, an epidural to help with the pain and stuff. And of course, the nurse comes in with the signature pad, and I'm like, is this even legal? Because she's clearly under duress. And that lady gave me the nastiest look. I'm like, am I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
It's
yeah,
complicated when people feel like they have no choice. It's
yeah,
complicated whenever and I think that is the best gift that we can give somebody else once we have gone through something, because we are showing them it is still your choice. And now,
yeah,
this is how I dealt with it, if that makes you feel better. This is
right.
what I would question if that
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel better. This is my program that I came up with, if it would help. And I think sometimes people don't want to do anything about it because they don't know if the work is worth it, because the grief
Yeah.
is and the sadness is deep. And so they're
Well,
not,
they resonate with it too.
yeah,
It
and they
becomes
resonate with
their
it. If it
identity.
worked for you, it could work for me. Um,
Right. And it becomes their identity a lot of times. Like
oh,
with people, they
100%.
want to sit in it because
100%.
it's
Yeah.
now they,
So
oh,
I'm really careful about how often and how I talk about my mom.
hmm,
Careful. Like, I don't bring it up in every conversation. I don't, uh, uh, you know, there were so many elements to how she passed away. It wasn't quick, right? So there was a lot of like things and discipline that Chris and I learned, my husband and I learned, sacrifices we made that maybe weren't the best. That we did it solely because it was what we thought was in the best interest of my mom,
right.
regardless of how it wrecked us. And it wrecked us.
Of
And
course it
we
did.
and I was super, and this is a whole other conversation, so we don't have to go into it, but I was really cognizant in real time of how I handled this situation could help or kill my marriage. And how
Yeah.
I handled this situation could help or hurt the relationship I have with the rest of my family. And what I am willing to accept and what I'm willing not to accept, and why, and give the people the why in real time. It was very, very advanced. I don't know why, I had the frame of mind that I did at that time, but I told him, I said, if I do this alone, I will probably feel alone for the rest of my life, and there's nothing you will be able to do about it. But if you come with me, if you help me, if you're there for me, if you just do the hard things and I ask you to do the hard things, I don't know if I could ever not remember that
Right.
and not appreciate that. And that's another lesson about grief where, when they say, well, she didn't even reach out to me until whoever died. And I'm like, yeah, take the call. Just take the call, because you just don't know, you don't know what they were going through. You don't know whatever, but they understand. And in that moment, that could be the darkest you have ever been in. And they're going to make
Right.
and so I think it's the same way. You being able to go through what you did gives you the opportunity to say, or at least think in your mind, I wonder if she feels like she doesn't have any choices, or she's not sure what to do, or maybe just holding her hand is really the only thing that will help this situation right now. And guess what? Then you have to choose at that point, okay, am I going to do it? Am I now gonna and choosing to be that person for somebody else is difficult, because sometimes they don't even recognize, like you just said, you don't even
Yeah.
recognize what Prime meant to you. You don't even recognize it's been 2 years. Like, how
Right.
long is that going to take, Faith?
Well, I didn't realize, like, I knew what it would be going into it. I knew Prime would be more of a mental game
Yeah.
than a physical game for
Yeah.
me.
You told me that. You're like, that's the
Yes.
problem. People think it's like losing 15 pounds and looking good in a dress. This
No,
will
it's
F
a
you
mental
up.
game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
It I think any competition or pageantry is always mental first.
mhm.
Everything else is secondary, unless you choose to put the secondary above, the mental game.
100%. 100%.
And I knew that it was going to be a mental game for me, like going into it, like pageantry, like you're getting up there and you have all these, pageantry things in your head. I don't
By
care
the way,
who
this
you
can
are,
be,
you have an idea of what pageantry is or what it has been to you up to that point.
yes. And
And
by the
then I
way,
went,
this can be anything. This can be
yeah,
any job. This can be any promotion. This can be
yes.
any change that you wanted to make industry wise from thing to thing, and you're learning something new. Keep going. Because this is not just pageantry. This is just
No, it's
skill
not.
set. Yeah.
But pageantry is so big and people have such formed opinions about it.
Yeah.
That to me, when I was going through it, I had formed opinions about it. Didn't realize I had formed opinions, but I did. And so I'm going into it and but I also knew that for me it would be a mental game just
Yeah.
because I turn everything into a mental game because that's my superpower. Like I think everyone's superpower is their mind.
Mhm.
It's got nothing to do with anything else, but it's their mind and how they perceive situations, how
100%.
they react to situations, how they make people feel, how
Mhm.
they make people feel included, because these are all different things. Um, and then communication. So like I gained one hell of a best friend out of Prime. Like so my mindset going into it is I thought it was going to be catty, not gonna lie. I thought it was going to be only about, okay, you need to run 500 miles in a week just so you can lose a half a pound. Like, let's get to it. Boom, boom, boom. These dresses need to be, because my dress was not typically pageant. How you had to like dress and walk and people always put on these fronts. Like I call it the Instagram filter because Instagram's this perfect compilation of all the best things in your life. And when I got in there and I started diving into it, and realized it wasn't that way. So I'm really, I guess,
Ours isn't. Ours
thankful.
is not.
Right, Prime. That's the only pageantry system that I have to compare anything to. So I'm really glad that that was the first one that I had ever
You
went
chose a good
into
one.
because otherwise I would have never ever. I mean, I'm not doing it anyway, but I would have never ever contemplated doing anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would probably talk smack about the whole thing. But I don't. I talk great about it because I had a bunch of like light bulb moments going through Prime and um and it was probably due to me losing my granddaughter just months before that.
Hmm.
Just months. So in October of 21 we lost her and I think I signed up November something of 21. Like
You
it was
remember that. And
really fresh.
I remember talking to you and saying, listen, if this is not the right moment, just try do it next year. If everything is too, because I said, if this is a healing process for you, this is a healing moment for you that doesn't include stretching yourself, do not do it. Some people have to compartmentalize,
Mhm.
others I do 5 things at once. So do want to make this caveat, by the way, because a lot of your listeners are going to be going through some type of grieving process or have
Yes.
just want like minded. So if you have healed or can compartmentalize the healing and want to be a part of Prime, come on in. But if you're just sitting in it
Yes.
and you need that moment to yourself, don't you dare think that you owe anyone anything of some type of superhuman strength that you're not willing, and ready to do, right?
Right. I want to so when I was in Prime and when I was going through the process to become, the Prime Queen, the
The title
winning the
ready.
pageant, whatever.
Mhm.
We went through the interview process and that was a question that they asked me was, do I believe that everyone in grief or like mothers that have lost a child should go into pageantry? And my answer still to this day is no.
Yeah.
It depends upon their mental capacity at that moment in time. Like if they're just fresh off the boat from that, no, absolutely not. You have other things you need to focus on.
Yeah.
And I stand by that today.
And,
Like
and
it's
all situations are different. Who the person
yes.
is, like what the relationship was before that. Again, because when my mom passed away, I was the sibling that was there every week. So I saw and knew and was mentally prepared. My siblings who weren't there at all had a really hard time and didn't
Yeah.
understand why I was looked so healthy. Like, what are you talking about? This is so fresh. And I'm like, fresh? Like, no. So yeah,
Like
so
this has been happening for 8 years. Like,
yeah, I was ready
but
for this. I was ready for this. I was ready for a lot worse than this. You know,
yeah.
it happened.
Because
So
you'd already done a bunch of your grieving through those 8 years. Like every time you saw her, something else was different.
every time I saw her, I either cried profusely or drank afterwards.
Yeah.
Ate a lot of carbs. So that's a whole other segment that we can do on all of the negative things that you can do
Wow.
when you are grieving. Yes, I
Right.
did it all. I did all the positive afterwards, but I did all the negative before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of loneliness. So that's another podcast we will have to do on
Did you
loneliness.
have a lot of anger?
Um, not so this is a whole other podcast because I will give you the short answer. My mother and I had absolutely no good relationship before this.
Okay.
It was awful. Um, so many different reasons. But I felt compelled when she got sick because I could step in, I did, regardless. My siblings who had the good relationship, they didn't have her anymore to have the good relationship. So what were
Mhm.
they? Why have the relationship? It was just a totally different experience. Um, and so after that, I think I was resentful of the fact that nobody knew how to help her and no one wanted to come and help her. And then after, because I put that in the eulogy, and then somebody told me to take it out of the eulogy, so I did. You know,
Probably wise
look at put it
decision.
in, suck it out. And then afterwards, being young and talking about loss was difficult. To this day, I have family members on the opposite side, like my other side of the family, who have not lost anyone. So
Hmm.
they have absolutely no clue when we talk about the loss of our grandchildren, that we can talk about it, but it's still that feeling inside that it is there, because you might not have a memory that pops up that's vivid at that particular moment, but it's just the whole relationship
Yeah.
sometimes can be there in the forefront of your mind, even by saying the words or thinking the thought
Yes.
of like, oh, that was the year my mom died, or could she have been here? What type of grandmother would she have been, knowing what type of mother she was to me? But I can still, and then again, a whole other podcast of romanticizing what could have been.
Right.
So I build her up like she was going to be this amazing grandmother to my children, and they're missing that. But
Hmm.
that might have never been the case.
You're
She
right.
never wanted to be around them. That wouldn't have happened though. That wouldn't have happened. She was the sacrificial person too, so she would have been here regardless. But it doesn't mean that I would have wanted her here, right?
Right. If the
And
relationship
so
between you and her wasn't good.
yeah, we romanticize it as opposed to it's still life, and it's still discipline that needs to be there. It's still a relationship that you need to work on. So the saying is, you don't know what you have until it's gone. Unless you're like me and you're analyzing it all day every day and you realize that you have what you have. Can I make it better?
Yeah.
Did I really fuck that up? And how do I make it better? Or I didn't, and I'm sick of trying to make it better because they don't want to make it better, and I don't like how things are. Uh,
Right.
and so
I
that's
like
really
how you
what
feel
comes
or
down
what
to
you
too.
do or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's the 5 different podcasts. So it's an hour. We're a lot past the time. So there's a whole bunch of other segments that we can come and talk about. And I don't mind talking about
Perfect.
them at all. Yeah. But I want to thank you so much for having me on here, and appreciating this frame of mind, and the opportunity that can come from a moment of loss. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for coming on here and talking about it. I feel so honored and so blessed. And if you've gotten anything out of this podcast, please share it with someone. Please go and
Anything at
like it
all.
on the YouTubes. on the YouTubers. And if you know someone that's going through grief, absolutely share it with them as well. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.